Thank you. The American Revolution begins up in Boston after the battles of Concord and Lexington. The American army surrounds the British, who are under a virtual siege. The British find out that British General Thomas Gage, who's in charge, they have no one on staff who really is an expert in ciphers and codes, and they have no system actually in place to send coded messages to their operations in Canada or even here in New York. American General George Washington takes command of the troops at Cambridge, and again, on the American side, there is nobody in charge of cryptology. Now, what you do have a situation where merchants are not totally ignorant of codes and ciphers. When they deal with their factors, their agents in London, they had a tendency to use a very cryptic cipher system to tell their agents what price to sell at and so on. And so if their messages were intercepted, their mail, because in the 18th century you had no privacy in the mails, you put it in the mail, it was public information, and you could be pretty much be assured that somebody was going to read it along the way. Now, one of the situations is you have Dr. Benjamin Church, who is the Surgeon General of the Continental Army. He is one of the 5 leaders of the Patriot movement in Massachusetts, along with John and Samuel Adams, John Hancock, Dr. Warren, and Dr. Church. The only problem is Dr. Church is a British spy. He's been on the British payroll since at least 1772. And so while he is running the American hospitals, he's sending in information to British generals in Boston. What you see at the bottom of the screen, got to point it the right way, right here, is an actual decoded handwritten message. That's the cipher key of his that was intercepted. How it was intercepted is he wasn't able to send his mail directly into Boston. It had to go down to Providence, down to Newport. So what he did is he sent his mistress, who was a prostitute in Boston, down to Newport to one of her former clients to get the message to the British captain of the vessel. She delivers the message to him. He promises to take it on board ship, sees a message that's all in ciphers and symbols, and so he decides not to do it, takes the document, goes to the governors of Rhode Island, who then sends him up to American General Greene, who, being a merchant, knows that it's an encoded message. The Americans put 2 teams to decipher the message, and they both, using frequency analysis, in other words, which letters appear the most common, you then back it out. The most common letter in English is the letter E. So you would start with figuring out what appears the most times, and that is the letter E. And then you work down from there. They come up with the exact same translation, both of them, and that's the code that they wrote down that he had used. Now, the difference between a cipher and a code, everybody has a tendency to misuse the terms. A cipher is when a character or a letter represents another character or letter. In other words, A is equal to 1, or delta, using a symbol, is equal to the letter K or something similar. A code is when a character represents an entire word, and usually you're going to need a code book to identify what the codes are, because you're going to be using so many. Generally, you're not going to be able to keep track of them in your head. One of the things we need to realize is the alphabet in the 18th century is not our alphabet. Okay? It is not identical. In the 18th century, the letters I and J are the exact same letter. There is no difference between the two. The letters U and V are the same letter. So if I gave you the letters I, V, L, Y, Today it would look strange. In the 18th century, they would automatically make the change and adjust it and immediately know that what I meant was July. Okay? And shorthand writing is another form of codes and ciphers. And the earliest book that I found on shorthand dates to 1586. So it was well known. What you're looking at is Joseph Stansbury's cipher. And it's very simple. It's A is equal to Z, B is equal to A. It's a one-letter shift. Joseph Stansbury is the person in Philadelphia who received the messages from Benedict Arnold, wrote them into cipher and codes, and they were brought across New Jersey by two different methods. Brought here to New York. They were given to the Reverend Jonathan Odell, who then decoded the messages and then turned them into British headquarters right here at 1 Broadway. They also use book codes, Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England, and if you notice it says 5th Oxford edition. It is very important that the two people sending and coding and decoding the messages are using the same edition. Otherwise you find out you put down the word balloon and they're reading it as baloney. So you've got to use the same edition. The first number is usually the page, the second number is the line, and the third number is the word. So 4598 would mean to go to page 45, to go down to line 9, go over to word 8, and that would be your word, which obviously you've got to have the same book. Dictionary codes. Very popular, used by all sides. A dictionary, the most common one used was Entick's New Spelling Dictionary. It has a list of words, alphabetical order, 2 columns, and you have just about every word that you could possibly want. What they would do is they would put a dot over the number to indicate whether it was the first column or the second column. They had a tendency when it was the first column to just ignore the dot. They would also do things like add 20 to the page or 7 or what have you. So if I was going to give you the number 15511 and I had added 20 to the page, I'm telling you to go to page 139. Okay? There is also an instance where they page the book backwards to try and keep it hidden. What you're looking at is the original letter from Benedict Arnold offering West Point for 20,000 pounds. It's in code, and the original letter is out at the University of Michigan at the Clements Library. This is a Pigpen cipher. We would call it like a tic-tac-toe board. They called it a Pigpen. You would place the letters in each one of the quadrants, and the two sides, the sender and the receiver, had to agree which letters are going where. Okay, so as long as you understood the positioning of the letters in the different slots, you were able to transcribe a message. So if you're looking here, you see in the first upper left quadrant the letters A, B, C. If you drew just the upper left quadrant without putting anything in it, it would indicate the letter A. If you drew the quadrant and put 1 dot, it would indicate the letter B. The upper left quadrant with 2 dots would be the letter C, and so on. Now, all sides wound up using this. The Americans, the British, the French. There's even a Hessian diary that's partially written in a Pigpen cipher. Now, that's what it would look like when you would actually see it. And if you took the time to translate it, it would give you the word traitor. If you look at the first letter, it's the lower left quadrant with 1 dot, so it's the letter T. And if you carry it out, you would then get the word traitor. The Pigpen cipher, by the way, is used up through the American Civil War. Oop.